Hello everyone, welcome to a new video on Martial Politics. I haven't done a new video in a little bit, but today I do have a special video more concerning the entire right-wing populist ideology, and I think one of the people who really leads this front is it's really Pedro Gonzalez. He writes excellent articles and he always has very good takes often on pretty much everything. So I'm going to be looking at several of his articles. Here's one of my favorite ones recently. The long shot, as implied by the picture and title of the article. It's about Huey Pierce Long of Louisiana, who I have talked about in a previous video. I will put put a link to that in the description below. But what he writes here is actually very good, and basically his final point is how, his phrase of, every man a king, and his political philosophy mostly aligns with, right-wing populism and not the left, really, like today. So he he says more. He says he mentions the very important parts of Huey Long's philosophy, of course, with welfare distribution, and how Franklin Roosevelt was scared of Huey Long's rising popularity. So, and really, and then the final point he has is here, and he says here, share the wealth should be seen by the right as a means to a new order, because most Americans don't object to the modern state in principle. They object to it in practice. They object to paying more in taxes and receiving nothing in return as its size and scope balloons. And even if the right wanted to decentralize and localize government, it would first require a longest approach to governance to take command of and bend or break the engines of industrial political centralization to its will. And then he concludes with saying, after all, every man a king has long loved to say is a fundamentally right-wing statement. And he's absolutely correct. And I also, just like some certain parts, like with Hamiltonian means to achieve Jeffersonian ends. And Long, like Caesar, saw the rot in Rome, saw the petty princes of his day, and put new teeth on the notion of using Hamiltonian means to achieve Jeffersonian ends. So, and I'll put like links to all these articles in the description as well. These are pretty good. He also, Pedro Gonzalez, he's not afraid to speak out against Donald Trump and the people who he supports. So in this article, he talks about James Timken, who I did mention in a previous video about J.D. Vance, how she is running for Ohio Senate, and she was like saying, "Oh, I'm gonna get Trump's endorsement, blah blah blah." And I think he might mention it in this article. How was it, like Lake or something? I don't remember what it was specifically, but he had mentioned, I watched sometimes Pedro Gonzalez has these good Periscope streams. I watch them every time I see them in my feed on Twitter. And he mentioned how Timken had basically wanted to rename like some lake or something in Ohio after Trump, and it sounded so pathetic. So in this article, he basically just says how Timken is just like an establishment Republican. She obviously is. She has this fake garbage, like veneer of being like, of being like a populist or whatever. Same thing like what Trump's done. So it says here, they claim Timken has worked against female conservatives in order to help their less conservative male counterparts and spends GOP donor money to undermine conservative Republicans. They also state that her goals, ironically, have aimed mostly at defeating conservative candidates who have been more supportive of President Trump than their opponents. I don't really care about like that last part, but It does kind of show that. I mean, like, the thing with Trump is, like, he kind of has, like, this facade of being, like, a populist. So even when you have people who do that, and you look at how terrible their politics are, then there are also people like, you know, Liz Cheney and other terrible people who like, oh, I hate Trump, but like they vote with him like on 95% of the time. She recently Stefanik became like the GOP like House chairman or whatever. She voted for in Trump's favor less than Liz Cheney. So it's not even about policy anymore. It's really just, oh, who can suck up to Trump as much as possible to secure support from the party. And I mean, I don't favor Liz Cheney at all. I think she's literally wrong on literally almost 100% of the issues. So I mean, she supports endless wars, fiscal conservatism. I mean, her father is literally a war criminal. I don't think I need to talk anymore, but again, with back to Timken, she's a complete disaster, and she is running for Ohio Senate right now. She has not received Trump's endorsement. It actually seems likely that J.D. Vance might receive Trump's endorsement, which would be good for his chances of winning. So, yeah, Jane Timken, absolutely garbage. Also, there's even more here. Timken actually used one of the few substantive immigration restriction policies enacted by the Trump administration to argue for more immigration, implicitly framing detractors not only as fearmongers but at odds with Trump himself. It's worth noting moreover, that DeWine and Timken insisted on admitting more refugees into Ohio at a time when opioid deaths, homelessness, and child homelessness are on the rise in the Buckeye State. People like Timken claim to be carrying forward a torch that was lit in 2016. In reality, they are merely capitalizing on the Trump brand to conceal otherwise wrong platforms that ensure forgotten Americans stay forgotten. Will Republicans push back on bad endorsements even when they come from Trump? And that is mostly not true. There are very few people who will actually speak out against his endorsements. I mean, like, Trump's endorsements are like the least I'm even concerned about. And even here, he talks about how Trump he's gotten so much money from his campaign. Like has like all these new, what is this, like Save America Leadership Political Action committee created after the November election, and merged with 31 million cash on hand. If the FEC filing shows. And most of that money, $30.5 million, was transferred from the Trump Make America Great Again committee, which I'm pretty sure is directly related to his campaign. So this is a very detailed article, and I actually recommend you read it. I will not be reading it all. Obviously, it's quite a bit. I will put it in the link in the description below. But the most important thing that Pedro Gonzalez really talks about is his economic stances. So, in this article, greed is good. Contemporary conservatism has in fact facilitated the corporate consolidation of the economy by entities that are actively hostile to the small business they hold up as props. So, it's actually a very good article, and I believe he says later on, Ben Shapiro here. So, start over here. Actually, no. The Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro added undermining confidence in the pricing mechanism of the market to make some quick cash and screw those guys. That is, Wall Street short sellers isn't virtue. In other words, the market is on three, but those of us it is not designed to benefit must pretend it is so that it may continue operating effectively. And Ben Shapiro is a complete failure as well. I mean, I think I've talked about him in a previous video, how he's basically wrong in almost everything, except for like social issues, of course. Like most social, like there's some couple things he says that are just wrong. Also, of course, his position of Israel, because he's a Jew. So, he actually talks about in this. He actually talks about this in another article. He actually talks about favoring a $15 minimum wage, which is very progressive from someone who is like right wing, and I actually support the same thing as well. Like I had mentioned this in a previous video, but there's even more. Some pretty spectacular stuff actually. There was this tweet he had: "Conservatism is dead, and humanism is inevitable." And basically, he puts a screenshot of this poll, the Economist YouGov poll, found that 71% of Republicans under 45 favored more government spending to create jobs, even if it required higher taxes. Among Republicans over 45, the numbers were almost perfectly reversed. 74% favored prioritizing lower taxes. The split between older voters who came of age under Ronald Reagan and younger voters defined by Trump reflects two different lived I think it meant lived life experiences as to what conservatism means. So this is pretty interesting, actually. This also is similar to other polls. I've seen other polls with actually Republicans favoring a higher minimum wage. I think it was almost 50% actually, and I think with I think some for Medicare for all. I actually think there were it's quite a bit that actually supported it. I'm not sure how accurate that poll was, but it is interesting though, that this is even like a thing. So this was tweeted by Ian Miles Chong, who doesn't live in the United States, by the way. So he says, handing the government the reins to manage job availability at the cost of higher taxes for employers and corporations is a great way to create capital flight and turn any nation into Venezuela. So he got completely ratioed here by Sean Head. Don't care, didn't ask. Plus, I think he lives in Malaysia. Actually, I think he lives in Singapore. He's pretty idiotic. So, there's actually, he got completely ratioed. So you want healthcare, 10 million Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Venezuela, iPhone. So, I do love, Ian Miles Strong, he's a complete moron. He is, of course, the wrong position on, almost every single issue. Economics. I'm pretty sure on even social issues as well. He kind of LARPs his right wing on social issues, but he's very weak on it. But besides that, Pedro Gonzalez, he's a very important figure on the right, and I do hope that there are more. There actually was a segment. He was on Tucker Carlson's show. I forgot when it was. Probably a couple weeks ago. It was a very good clip, and I actually will play it now, and then I will conclude the video afterwards. So just watch that, and I'll be back.
Pedro Gonzalez is a senior writer with American Greatness. He joins us tonight. Pedro, thanks so much for coming on. Look, I don't want to be unfair to Frank Luntz, who is not an evil person, and I don't want to suggest that, and I don't think that he's the cause of the Republican Party's problems. I do think, however, he's a symptom, clearly a symptom of them. What does the party's reliance on Frank Luntz, who's a liberal, tell you about their priorities, the leadership of the party?
Right. Well, in the 90s, we faced a crime wave and had a consensus about getting tough on crime. That worked. It kept people safe. Today, as homicide rates soar to historic highs, we have a consensus from Republicans like Tim Scott with Joe Biden about getting soft on crime, in part because guys like Luntz are advising policy. Democrats and their allies are going to continue getting everything that they want until the right learns to fight its own party and demands fighters for it. And I'll give you an overview of what Republicans are up to across the country. In Texas, Republicans, although they have the upper hand over Democrats there, have sandbagged a transgender sports bill. The Texas Republican legislature is also dragging its feet on passing a bill that would prohibit the chemical castration of minors. And Republicans, in North Dakota, following in the footsteps of Republicans Asa Hutchinson and Kristi Noem, the Republican governor there, Doug Burgum, has vetoed a transgender sports bill. The Republican-led Senate there then upheld his veto. Recently, Josh Hawley was the only Republican to vote no against lunatic Mazie Hirono's hyper-politicized hate crime bill, which, of course, Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran was instrumental in putting together. Moran recently got endorsed by Trump, by the way. Republicans also took the idiotic position of condemning the left and Maxine Waters' intimidation of the Chauvin jury, and then celebrating the outcome of that trial and promising more soft-on-crime policies, which is the same exact thing the Democratic Party wants. And I don't think that it was an accident that on Wednesday night, when Tim Scott responded to Joe Biden, he had one short, insubstantial throwaway line about immigration, because congressional Republicans right now are talking with the Democratic Party about putting together an amnesty deal.
It's also stunning to me that at a time when corporate America, not all corporations, but the biggest ones for sure, have aligned as one against Republican voters, that Republican leaders are still doing their bidding and hiring Frank Luntz, who works for them, to tell them what to say. When are they going to realize who their enemies are?
They're going to realize that when they start to feel afraid of their voters. And I think this is not going to change, because you and I can burn the house down every night on TV, but it's not going to change until Republicans feel afraid, feel accountable, in other words, to their own voters. And I think that Republican voters need to stop viewing the party as an ally and start viewing it as an instrument, something to be whipped into shape and not relied upon, because there is no plan but what we make.
Wow, that's deep and true. Just to restate, and I'll end with this, Republican voters need to understand the party not as an ally, but as an instrument of their will, right? It's a democracy.
Yes.
And realize the party won't change until they make it change. Is that a fair?
That's right. Absolutely. The Republican Party is an instrument to be willed, not something to rely on because they're going to stab you in the back. And there's this line from Reagan that someone who's on your side 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. Well, when that 20% constitutes the most important existential issues, and on that 20% they stab you in the back every time, that's not really a friend. That is, in fact, a traitor.
That's right. That's someone who's betraying you and your deepest interests. I agree with that completely. Pedro Gonzalez, thank you for that. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So I do hope you did enjoy that short clip from Pedro Gonzalez on Tucker Carlson's show. He has been on his show a couple times in the past as well. He's talked about similar issues. So here, with Joseph Ford-Cotto, he's a complete... this guy, he's this guy who basically LARPed as he's LARPing as a nobleman, he claimed, and he got the title of a baron from some king in Africa. I forgot what country it was specifically. I think it might have been Rwanda, but I might be wrong. But yeah, he says, imagine being naive or just cringeworthy enough to take a YouGov poll of Republicans seriously. He even goes later on this tweet from Ian Miles Chong that I had showed previously. He says, great response to Pedro G and his toxic horse manure. So he's a complete moron. And Pedro responded very... Oh, that's complaining. I've never heard of Venezuela before, because he said here, handing the government the reins to manage jobs availability at the cost of higher taxes for employers and corporations is a great way to create capital flight and turn any nation to Venezuela. So, that's the most boomer take. It's such a boomer take, and it actually reminds me of this one meme I have posted on my Twitter before, and it's like this Joker voice, and it's like, iPhone, Venezuela, bottom text, 100 billion dead, and it's just, You don't like, and it's like you don't like capitalism, yet you exist. iPhone, Venezuela, bottom text, 100, I think, million or billion dead. Actually, billion, I'm pretty sure it's 100 billion dead. Um, that's basically, that's what the argument Ian Miles Chung was making, and he's a complete failure, as I said previously. He was also endorsed by Trump, funnily enough, so it's only more reason not to like not to just follow Trump blindly. So and this was really good. And I think Pedro Gonzalez, again, I have mentioned this in previous videos, but he's really good at moving, you know, people who are like more right wing or moderate on economic issues and pushing them more towards the left or whatever. Basically, I like this term economic nationalism. That's essentially what is being proposed. By Pedro Gonzalez and people like him. And in that regard, he's really been a great person that way. And I do like how he has been very bold with his actions. And uh, I think really he represents the uh, really the big right wing ideology in the future. I think stuff like this coming to power in the United States is kind of inevitable. And I do think that in the future, hopefully, we will have an effective right wing executive who will institute uh, substantive change to the United States, uh, bettering the lives of the middle class, increasing the minimum wage, protecting the nuclear family, stuff like that, which I have said in previous videos, that really protecting the families, it's really essential to creating a successful and functioning society. Anyways, I do hope you all enjoyed this video. Of course, if you want to, you can like and subscribe for more. And I'm not sure how many videos I will be making in the near future. I do hope you all are having an excellent day, and I hope you're all having a good May as well. We're already halfway through the month. Time really does go by really fast. So I hope you all have an excellent day. And I will see you all in the next video. Farewell. And also, you can follow me on Twitter if you want. But farewell and have an excellent day.